Welcome to the nightclub, guys. It's your host, the Night Wrencher. Now, the bad weather and the infections keep going on and on, so I might as well make another carburetor video. This is actually one of the things that tripped me out the most about carburetors, and I didn't quite understand it. It took me about 4 or 5 different people explaining it to me in different ways to fully understand how this circuit actually works and why things are set up the way they are. So the system that I'm talking about is the transition circuit on a carburetor. So we've got 2 things here. Let's see, kind of dirty base plate, but bear with me. So we've got this hole for the idle air mixture, and then beyond that you've got your transition slot. So they say that you're supposed to set up your transition so that you've got about a square set up here, right? There's a ton of videos about setting up your idle correctly, but no one actually explains why and if setting up this way is actually the correct way given certain situations. Now, a quick rundown on how this system works. Alright, so I've got a metering block here to demonstrate. So we've got fuel going in through the main well, not shown in here. Then we've got the passageway that goes up to the idle feed restrictor, down to this fuel passage that gets transferred to here where the idle mixture screw is, and then this goes into this section here of the carburetor and then gets dumped in through a hole here at the bottom for fuel. That then gets transferred to the hole that's right here for the transition, and then that gets pulled out to the transition here by the throttle blades. So now that you know, like a quick rundown, Thunderhead 289 has a really good video about this and a couple other ones. The reason why you have to have a square, and I'm going to try to make this as simple as I can, is as the throttle is being opened, more and more and more of the transition is getting further and further open. After it gets to about this point, vacuum is no longer being applied to the transition, and you start getting fed by your main jets, the circuit of your main jets. Before the throttle gets about to this point, it's all transition. After that, it's main jets. So as you pull more and more vacuum from your transition, you start to pull more and more fuel. So what happens if you have trouble having your car to idle and you start opening it about this much, now when you go to open your throttle to accelerate, you have to wait until your main jets start pulling fuel, and so you have this off idle stumble. The key is to actually close it as much as you can, the adjuster screw, pull it all the way out, close this all the way shut, and then holding this shut, start tightening this down until you just start to feel resistance against this, and then you have to leave that alone. Once you have that, the initial adjustment set up, then you're supposed to start up your car, hook up a vacuum gauge or an AFR gauge, and then get the highest reading of vacuum or a fairly lean mixture when hot. If you do this when it's cold, well, after it gets hot, it's going to be completely out of whack. So you've got to warm up your engine 100%, and not just idling up to operating temperature. You've got to have the carburetor heat soaked, intake manifold has to be heat soaked, 100% driving conditions. After that's all set up, you're going to turn the car off, you're going to turn it back on, and then you're going to take a note of your idle air mixture or your vacuum reading. So if we're talking about idle mixture, usually when it's cold, your idle mixture is going to be lean. As it warms up, it's going to get rich. So what happens is if you set everything up when your engine's cold, after you get it warm, it's going to be really, really rich, and that's what happens a lot of times, that your car will run great when it's cold. You'll turn it off, go to the store, come back, and it won't want to start up, or it'll be very, very forced because it's going to be super, super rich. So you're supposed to lean it out as much as you can for the engine to run properly. At normal hot engine operating temperature, you want to be somewhere in the 13.5 to 14.5 range at idle. So the way you control that is not only with the idle mixture screws, but you've also got this passage on the OEMs. Actually, I got one right here. On the OEM, you have this idle feed restrictor. And on the aftermarket one, sometimes it'll be here and sometimes it'll be up here. On this metering block, the passages up here. What this does, it's like another set of jets. It limits the amount of fuel that gets passed through your idle / transition circuit, because both circuits are fed from the same line, I should say. So what happens is you set up your AFR perfectly. Warm starts are perfect, no problem. Starts up cold, a little lean. You put the choke, after the choke engages, it warms up. After you get to operating temperature, you are good to go. No problems there. Okay, then you put it in gear, or you put it in first gear, and you go to take off, and you notice that at part throttle, right around this, like cruising, you're getting a lot of stumbling. It's like popping, stumbling, right? And a lot of people blame that on your off idle, on the accelerator pump, or your main jets are too small. What I basically found out was that the reason you'll be good at idle but not good at transition is because you're not getting enough fuel through your idle feed restrictor, right? A lot of these carburetors are oversized, so you don't usually have that issue. But on the carburetors that have it undersized, like if you got a small carburetor that you want to run on a slightly larger engine, you're going to have that off-idle stumble because you're not going to get enough fuel. Some people blame it on carburetors that are too big for an engine. You're not pulling enough vacuum to pull enough vacuum off the transition circuit. That might also have something to do with it. Some people blame it on the idle air bleeds on the top of the carburetor up here. Those things. But what I found that a lot of these problems can be fixed by just opening up your idle feed restrictor. So what happens when you open up your idle feed restrictor, you will put in, a lot of these carburetors start off with 25, a 28, a 30, 32, 35. Those seem to be the common sizes. So on the carburetor that I was working on, it had a 28. I didn't have the correct drill bit, and I drilled it out to a 40, and it was running really good, but it was also running super rich. After that, I got an aftermarket metering block, and then I put another one of these in here and turned it down to a 35. Much better, but not quite there, still running a little rich. I took this out and got a 30, and it started running a little bit lean in the transition, went up to a 32, and now I'm good to go. No problem. Sometimes you can, on the metering blocks that have the hole undersized, like on something like this, I don't know what size it is, but let's say it's undersized, you can get yourself a set of numbered drill bits and drill these out to whatever size you need them to be. So first you figure out what size you have, and then you'll go up 2 sizes. And then you'll go up 2 sizes again, and then 2 sizes again. Each bump up in 2 sizes will get you about, I want to say, half a point to a quarter point AFR. If you're doing this by vacuum, same basic operation, but you're going to notice that when you put it in drive, your vacuum's going to drop like significantly. Then, while you're holding the brake in drive, you're going to open up your idle mixture screws. And you're going to see that the idle, not only does it improve, your vacuum's also going to start going up. So I had to do this with my duster. We don't have an AFR gauge on that. As soon as it was running good at idle, no big issues, you would put it in drive and it would start stuttering and stumbling. You know, that's a big issue with carbureted cars. So after it was there, it was struggling to idle. So then I went ahead and I turned them half a turn, one on each side, and it started to get better. Then he was able to lay off the throttle a little bit, and then I was able to go another half turn, and it started to get better. I went another half turn, and it started to get really good, and now he didn't have to hold the throttle with his right foot anymore. Then I turned it up one more, and the idle cleared up, and vacuum almost doubled in drive. The only way to tell without an AFR gauge if you're getting a lot of hesitation, and we're not talking about the initial hesitation as you're trying to go. We're talking about a smooth patch of road. You're in the transition circuit, and your car's like, if you accelerate more, it'll go away because now you're in your main jets, and your main jets are probably fine. But then you start slowing down, you're back in the transition, you're not getting enough fuel through your transition circuit, and that could be either one of two things. This is opened way too high, and you're in that in between your main jets and transition. You're not getting enough vacuum to either of them, so you're running lean, or your transition is not being fed enough through the idle feed restrictor on your metering plate, and you got to check those out. independently. Once you open up your idle feed restrictor, you're going to need to reset your idle mixture screws, because increasing the size of your idle feed restrictor will richen up both the transition and the idle mixture, because it feeds both circuits simultaneously. And that's not usually a big deal. You'll usually have to turn it in each side half a turn to put it back to where it was, more or less. Obviously, you're going to find out exactly on your own car, but this is something that a lot of people don't really talk about. They just tell you, set the transition to a square and all your problems are going to go away. Well, that's not, 100% accurate for most people. So I hope this gives people a little bit more insight on how the transition system works. And I hope this helps a lot of people with their carburetor issues that seem to have a problem at idle and low throttle conditions. So that's all for today. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Night Wrencher out.